Today I have with me on the show Dr. Laura Purdy. Dr. Laura Purdy is known as America's favorite doctor. She is a board certified family medicine physician, licensed in all 50 states plus DC, and has been featured in Vogue, Fox News, ABC, NBC, and NPR, among others, as the nation's leading authority and thought leader on the future of digital healthcare. Dr. Purdy's interest in helping people drew her out of a professional career as a performing pianist to earn a BA in psychology from the Ball State University of the Health Sciences, something I'm eager to dive into in a bit. Graduating from family health medicine residency at Georgia's Martin Army Hospital, she began 14 years of service as a U.S. Army physician where she cared for both men and women all over the country undergoing basic training, Airborne School Ranger School, and soldiers on post. During that time, she delivered hundreds of babies and treated hundreds of soldiers on the ground. After her time as an Army physician, she relocated to North Carolina to serve as a battalion surgeon, where she practiced telemedicine while overseeing the care of special operations combat medics deployed to Africa. This experience prepared her for the internal medicine pediatrics hospitalist role at Fort Campbell, Kentucky Army Hospital. She then went on to build Army's extensive telemedicine networks before doing the same for dozens of private virtual health companies. After she left the military, Dr. Purdy discovered her passion for ensuring equal access for quality healthcare for everyone in America, and she immersed herself in the digital healthcare industry, serving over 20,000 virtual patients as the first full-time telemedicine physician and medical director. This led to a key role of bringing virtual treatment during the pandemic and to those in the Ukraine war zone. Dr. Purdy is now a sought after digital medicine expert, serving as a medical director, co founder, and advisor for more than 50 leading telehealth providers, including HIMSS and HERS, WISP, Open Loop, and MD integrations. Dr. Purdy resides in Nashville, Tennessee. Is that where you're still at, Dr. Purdy?
For now, it is.
For now. A beautiful area, by the way. And she lives with her husband of 10 years and four kids under the age of 10. At the young age of 37, she is fueled by a passion and drive to help as many people as she can. Dr. Purdy uses her role as a C-suite executive to carry out a vision of establishing the most advanced healthcare systems. And she brings together the greatest minds in medicine and seeks to help millions of people using the best technology can offer. Dr. Purdy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's so crazy for me to hear all of that stuff because it's like, how does that fit into one life? But that's true. All of that is true that you just read.
It's fascinating. How did you go from being a pianist to a doctor and then being in the army? What was that transition like?
Well, it in hindsight, as I look back on it, right, just because this was 25 years ago when all of that was happening, it happened because I got my heart broken. I was in the music industry, and there
Mhm.
was an instance where there was a professional show involved, there was bullying involved, and music was my first love and first passion, and I still love it, but the social circumstances that happened surrounding this particular event broke my heart so badly as an 18-year-old kid that I walked away from that. And it really was just my dad saying, go into healthcare. That's a great career. And his sister, my aunt, is a nurse practitioner at Vanderbilt. I bet she's been there the longest of all nurse practitioners. And I started shadowing her and said, okay, great. That sounds great. And then in the early 2000s, you remember what it was like in the early 2000s. It was very patriotic, yellow ribbons, USA, USA. And the war coverage was everywhere. I mean, you couldn't turn your TV or your radio on without hearing and seeing, and like magazines and just everywhere. The war was everywhere. And so when I was deciding where to go to medical school, there seemed to me no other option than to serve. So I applied to the Uniformed Services University, didn't apply anywhere else, and said, this is what I want to do. I want to serve. I want to take my medical career and be a part of this war effort. And it, the rest is history. You already said the rest of it. The rest is history.
So what was that like? You go into the army and you're delivering babies, you're taking care of these soldiers, both men and women. What was that like for you? Can you describe a little bit of your duties and how it's prepared you for what you do today?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, and I share this with anybody. I talk to young people and even older people sometimes who are thinking about going and serving, and they say, I'm not a soldier. And what I say to them is, I was also definitely not a soldier. I mean, I was a liberal arts school former musician who made a pretty short, I had a 6-month window to train and went into the military. And people who are still serving, I didn't retire, I resigned. And my colleagues in the military are still in, and they will be for probably 6 to 8 or 10 more years in order to be able to retire with all of that. And the people who knew me when I was in, they would say I was not a very good soldier, right? Because I'm not really athletic. I was not a big fitness person. I was not good at shooting guns. I wasn't tactically. I'm small. I'm a small person, and I wasn't a stereotypical classical good soldier. Now, I did learn how to read rules and regulations and be a good officer, and I learned how to be a good battalion surgeon, which is like a commander's advisor. So it was really hard for me. It was a huge adjustment. And like I shared with you before we went on air, I have an entrepreneur's heart from probably since the day I was born. So I love to innovate, and I love to change, and I love to evolve. And you can't really do that in the military at all. You just can't. It's a rigid structure with rigid rank and rules and regulations and roles and responsibilities and traditions and customs. And there's not room for people like that there at all.
Mhm.
So there were a lot of bumpy times for me, and I had a lot of hard life lessons I got to learn in the military about being under authority and, following the rules and doing what you're told. And that was hard for me. But the experiences that I received every single day of my life now, I use stuff that I learned in the military. I learned so much about being a leader and running organizations and being a manager and taking care of patients from your heart, not from your, the check or the reimbursement. And so I don't regret it at all, but it was so challenging for me.
I bet. I'm putting myself in your shoes, and I know I I would have been challenged as well. I don't consider myself having been soldier material either at that age, but it's such a good education. And when I say education, just broad in many ways. I know, I was telling you about my son being air traffic control in the Navy, but how much he's matured. He could have stayed here and gone to University of New Mexico, but I don't think he would be who he is today because he is a leader. He was very introverted. I wouldn't say shy, but kind of a quiet, introverted sort of guy. And it really brought him out of his shell. And, the main thing, the leadership skills and learning how to lead from the heart
Yeah.
and really having it stem from there. So I think that's beautiful. Now you mentioned, or I mentioned, I guess, when I was introducing you, that the telemedicine in the Army, I guess I didn't think of them having that aspect of medicine. Can you describe that a little bit?
We had to. Well, if you really think about it, once I say what I'm about to say, you're going to say, "Oh, yeah, no, right. I know what you're talking about." Because if you think about it, so for example, for me, I was one battalion surgeon, which is just another word for the unit doctor. I'm not a real surgeon.
Hmm.
That's the term that they call it. So I'm the head doctor, right? And I had a PA, and I think it was somewhere between 30 and 50 medics. I don't remember the whole number, but they would go all across of Africa. So from coast to coast of Africa, the biggest continent in the world, they would be scattered in the countries throughout Africa. And there's no way that I, as the one doctor, could be all across Africa in 30 different places. And so the best place for me to be actually was in North Carolina at Fort Bragg while they are in Africa, because heaven forbid me, the doctor, loses the ability to communicate, which happens a lot in Africa. So I would be in North Carolina and they would be in Africa taking care of patients. And we saw everything. We saw traumas. We saw infectious disease. We saw, infectious diseases that you don't see here, like malaria and chikungunya and all those types of things, insect bites, injuries, head injuries, accidents, because things happen when you're training, and appendix ruptures. We saw that. People who needed actual surgeries out there, burn wounds, occasionally gunshot wounds, but that was rare during that time. And I would advise them through telemedicine because I was in North Carolina and they were all across Africa. So if they needed something, which they didn't always need something because they're very, very good, I would do telemedicine through FaceTime on my iPhone or a phone or whatever, Skype sometimes from North Carolina.
Wow, I guess I never thought of it, but when you put it that way, a vast area, and then all of the different situations that you listed, all of the medical conditions, the accidents, the infections, yeah, you would absolutely need telemedicine to
You have to.
communicate.
You have
So,
to. And that's the same everywhere, because you think about when the military deploys, they're scattered. They're not just in one place, right? So you have to be able to communicate with everyone delivering the care at the point of injury.
so this prepared you for then you get out of the Army, you resign, and what was your next step? Did you go directly into telemedicine? Did you have your own practice, a little of both?
Well, I call it a cross taper, because I knew that I was getting out of the military. I was under no illusion. I was not going to stay for 15 more years. And so I served 14, but because of, it's just a little piece of tidbit of information for people who may be listening. So you usually do have to do 20 years, but I went to the Uniform Services University, which is like a West Point, but for medical school. And those 4 years of school, even though you're active duty, you wear a uniform, you have an ID card, you do PT, you get all the pay like a second lieutenant with no time in service. Those 4 years don't count towards retirement. So you serve 24 years to get out like you served 20. So even though I got out at 14, I would have had to do 10 more. Does it make
Wow.
sense? So that's
Yes.
why I did 14, but I got out because I would have had a decade left. So what was your question? Sorry. I wanted to give that little point of clarification.
Oh no, that was good. It was how did you when you got out, did you open private practice? Did you go
Right.
right into telemedicine?
Yes. Okay. Thank you for jogging my memory. so so I knew I was getting out, and the interesting thing was is I had had two children by that time, and I didn't have enough money to send them to daycare. So one of my friends shared with me about a moonlighting opportunity. I did not want to moonlight at another hospital because that's more time away from home, more time away from the children. And he told me about moonlighting at MD Live, which is one of the oldest telemedicine now. I think they've been bought by an insurance company. They're one of the oldest companies in the US. And I started doing off duty employment, which is what they call when you have a side hustle. You side hustle while you're in the military. So my nights, weekends, on maternity leaves, because I had two more maternity leaves after that. And as a hospitalist, you only work about half the time. 4 on, 4 off, 3 on, 3 off was our schedule. I started doing telemedicine in that off time while the kids were at school so that I could just make enough money to put them into daycare. So as I got out, I said, I love this. This is the future. This is healthcare. This is the way that we need to be going. And I want to be a part of this, and I want to do this. So when I got out, I dove directly into the industry, and I have never looked back.
I think it's fabulous that people can reach out to doctors all over the nation and get the care they need. Being in Albuquerque, we're sometimes a little bit limited with how many doctors we have available to us. They're nurse practitioners. They're very busy. They often book out months in advance. So having that option, or there might even be services that aren't yet offered in Albuquerque that are offered, say, in New York or Florida or someplace else. I'm thinking in terms of like functional medicine and some
Yes.
of that type of testing that is just now beginning to catch on in communities. But some communities and rural communities might lag behind. So it's beautiful that it gives them that option.
They do, and there's a term for what you're saying right now. Is it's a care desert. And it's not just because you're in New Mexico and it's deserts there, but we have. If you've ever heard of like food deserts, there's that type of term is a little in vogue right now. But we say care deserts when there's regions of the country where there's people that live there, but there's not enough doctors or specialists or mental health or functional medicine, whatever it is, the care that people need, they can't get it geographically. And telemedicine, when people say to me, how do you think telemedicine helps the healthcare system in the US? I say that it's one of the solutions to care deserts because it's harder to make more doctors. It's harder to make more nurse practitioners. It takes time, it takes money, it takes education, it takes years, right? But it's easier relatively to kind of reallocate the physicians that are in other parts of the country through technology to the places like you that have a care desert. It's amazing.
Oh, it is amazing. Do you see in the future, this just popped into my head, but I'm always thinking about how people go to their different specialists. And sometimes it can get a little much, like you're going to your rheumatologist, and then you're going to your dermatologist, and then you're going to the family practitioner, and the communication isn't occurring. So sometimes I think the plan of care can feel very dissected. Do you think that's something in the future where groups of doctors, caretakers work together?
Gosh, I hope so. And I think it's fascinating that you brought that up because we didn't get a chance to talk about my master plan. But I'll tell you right now about my master plan. You may have heard the America's Favorite Doctor title, but it's actually a brand. America's Favorite Doctor is a brand. And it starts with me because if change won't occur if we don't drive the change ourselves. But I also have two nurse practitioners now that fall under the America's Favorite Doctor umbrella because they're the right kind of person, they're the right kind of provider, and they have the mission and the heart. But my vision and my goal is to take my virtual primary care clinic, which currently has 28,000 patients in it, and three of us providers that are working on it, to make it multi-specialty nationwide. It already is nationwide, but multi-specialty nationwide, multi-provider who is the right type of provider, because not just anybody, but also have bridges into brick and mortar facilities all across the country, completely cash pay, direct to consumer with no need for insurance unless you need it for trauma or hospitalization. I'm building that right now. The virtual clinic is built. We have about 200 locations across the US that I've started to partner with to have this flowing in and out of the clinic and online. And my vision is that I want to say within the next 5 years, but maybe it'll take a little longer than that. But I want to create this robust health system all across the country for people everywhere to be able to flow back and forth between this virtual and in-person care. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm hoping to make that actually.
That is so exciting, and I love that because that was going to be one of my questions about, the brick and mortar aspect, because then sometimes there's something that can't be done via telemedicine. So you need that collaboration with
Yes.
perhaps local doctors. And can you speak into that a little bit? What are the pros we've talked a little bit about, but what are the limitations, I guess would be a better word, of telemedicine?
There are limitations, and that's what we're working to minimize. When I say we, I say me and the America's Favorite Doctor enterprise team, because we have a huge team of people that are working on this project right now. And there is no substitute for an in-person physical exam for many things. We know we need pap smears and colonoscopies and breast exams and lab work and physical exams. Like if you like cancer screenings, you need physical exams, some rheumatology, physical exam. if you need biopsies and procedures and all of that, childbirth, it needs to be done in person. But our doctors and our clinicians are just totally overwhelmed with the number and the volume, like you said it yourself, getting them in to be seen. So my hope is that we can find a way to funnel the things that don't need to be seen in person into the virtual side, and then to leave room for everyone to get their physical exams and to get their pap smears and their colonoscopies and their prostate exams or whatever it is they need in person. Another thing right now that is a problem that we haven't really solved yet is how to get the testing. So you mentioned functional, like the functional testing, the blood draw testing, the pulmonary function test, or heart testing, or even x-rays or MRIs. Our patients in virtual health, they do need that. And it's kind of interesting because when I talk to people that make laws, they say, well, why don't you do that? And I say, well, we want to do that. We want to do that. It's not that we don't, as doctors, it's not that we don't want to do that. We do. But right now, the systems haven't made it easy enough and or cheap enough or, simple enough for the patient to make it happen. So it's not that the doctors that are doing virtual care don't want to do that. It's that nobody has invented a way to allow us to do it easily yet. So those are the two big ones that I see, and we are making steps to improve that.
And how does insurance play into that? Do you find that that's a difficult thing that they don't want to cover, certain states or certain fields?
It is difficult and it's dangerous because if you don't obey the insurance laws, which are hard to do, because as a nationwide provider, there are hundreds of insurance plans that I could be in network for, which means there's hundreds of insurance rules and regulations that I have to know how to follow. I actually just got a phone call yesterday from a investigator at the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, and they're worried about how many patients I saw. I did prior authorizations for 6 patients in April, and that raised a red flag for them as a potential fraud case. And the thing about doing virtual is when you have patients all across the country, you can see more patients. You should be seeing more patients than people who are tied to a room and in a hospital, in a brick and mortar, working 9 to 5 with 20-minute appointments for people. We should be able to see more patients virtually. And the challenge is, so that's the reason why I do cash pay right now, because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to accidentally not know what the rules are of one particular insurance company. Now, we do prior authorizations. If we believe that you're a good fit for a medication that is a little more expensive, we'll do that paperwork for you. But for me, billing for the visits, I won't do, because I love what I do so much. And I'm terrified of not knowing a law or a little rule or regulation or raising a red flag just by doing my job with single digit number of prior authorizations. It's so easy to look like we're doing something wrong that I avoid insurance for now, because I want to have the freedom to build what the people need and what the country needs and what people want and what clinicians are dying to do, which is have a better quality of life. And right now, I can't do that working with insurance.
Oh, I could see that easily. And it's constantly changing and the
Always.
laws change. And so to stay on top of that, it's kind of like tax laws where you're better off hiring somebody, because to stay on top of that, we're going to cross a line or make a mistake somewhere.
Yep.
So, very wise, I think, and hopefully that will change in the future and not be so
So,
complex. Most
or we'll start our
definitely.
own insurance, or we'll start our own insurance. I'm not opposed to starting my own insurance that's designed to work with telemedicine and brick and mortar hybrid. Nothing's off the table. I'm willing to change the whole system if that's what it takes to get people better care.
That's that entrepreneur in you. You see a way and let's go. I love
Do
it.
it. It's got to change it, right? It's not going to change itself. And we talk a lot about it, but not a lot of people are doing about it. So I'm going to do.
Now, during the pandemic, that obviously increased telemedicine. I mean, it probably just exploded, because I know all of a sudden I was no longer meeting with my clients in person, training, doing all that. We were meeting just like this on Zooms and online and FaceTime. It just kind of changed everything. Was that overwhelming? Did it just suddenly just flood doctors with they had to get up on the technology, and what was that like?
It was, well, for me, I had been in telemedicine for many years prior to the pandemic. And I was already in a position to be advocating and fighting for it and trying to convince doctors to do it, trying to convince patients to do it. And sometimes it was like pulling teeth, but I could see the vision. So I'm thankful for the pandemic's effects on telemedicine because we, and I'll say we as the people that were already in the industry, kind of blazing that trail, we were so ready. We were ready for it. And finally, the state medical boards and the Federation of State Medical Boards and the individual state medical boards and the DEA and the AMA and the health systems and HIPAA and everybody finally Department of Health and Human Services, finally everybody said, okay, this is not only good, it's necessary. We need it. The people need it. And then the people were willing to adopt it. The doctors were willing to try it. And I think it really set the course for telemedicine that we see today. So even though the pandemic was a huge tragedy, and of course no one would ever say I'm glad that happened, I am thankful for its effects on the telemedicine industry because it primed the whole country to be ready to start considering widespread change.
Yes, all of a sudden there it was, and we had no choice. So like you said, it's one of the positives that came out of a very tragic situation. But just being able, like you said, you were all ready to go, but maybe people weren't quite ready for that concept, but then we were all forced to embrace it. We had to do it. I know my father-in-law, and he would normally go to the VA. He's God bless him, he's passed away now. But during the pandemic, I remember trying to help him with all the. I'd set up my computer, and he was like, "What are we doing? Why am I not being, driving into the VA?" And do
Scary.
you see a lot of that where people are older and just the tech? I mean, it's not that complex, but when you're older, all of a sudden to have to be on a phone or some kind of device and do your visit with your doctor, are they resistant when they're older?
They they are not resistant. Prior to the pandemic, definitely resistance, right? But now I don't necessarily see resistance, but I do see just lack of understanding that there there are some 60 and 70-year-olds who are great, 80-year-olds who are amazing with technology, but we see it more often that they just don't understand. And we'll send them a message and they don't reply, and we ask them questions and they don't reply, or they can't figure out quite how to upload their lab work into the system. And thankfully, it's very common that someone like you who can help them set it up and help them get going. I think there has been growth. There has been growth in the understanding, but they still, bless their little hearts, they want to do it, but need help, which is, I think, why some of the newer telemedicine models that have TMAs and RNs and other support staff helping them get to the point where they can do that visit, I think is much more user friendly for the older generations.
And it would really be to their benefit because I know my father-in-law, he was 88 years old. So the drive in the VA, we had to drive across town, wait in the waiting room. It would wipe him out. His blood pressure would go sky high, where if you're in your home, you're relaxed, you're in your environment.
Yes, I actually was speaking with one of my attorney friends. I went to speak with a medical board a couple weeks ago in Mississippi, and one of my associates down there was sharing with me that they had had a spouse with Alzheimer's, and at the end of and during the pandemic, but they got to do their Alzheimer's sort of appointments with the neurologist through telehealth. And it was amazing because there's no disorientation. You are at home, you're in your environment. You don't have to worry about the safety hazards and stairs and traffic. And if they have a panic attack or if there's a little bit of aggression, it keeps them at home. And same thing for children too, right? Both ends of the spectrum, keep them home. It's better to be able to do that in your own environment if you can. Think about new moms with babies and infants and breastfeeding and diaper rashes and all kinds of things that it feels more humane not to get those groups of people out of the house if you don't have to.
Oh, absolutely. I'm in. recently published a book, and I'm in a group with a lot of other writers, and there's a vet in there, and he is severely disabled, and it is extremely difficult to get him out of the house and to an appointment. But I know how much he has relied on Zoom and this type of communication because he's been shut in. And so in a way, it's been a blessing for him to be able to communicate with the outside world, in that manner.
I believe it. And I think it's wonderful because if you think about a generation or two ago, people just suffered. People just suffered. They either sucked it up and did it, or they didn't and they suffered. So I really look at virtual health as a way to move in the direction of ending suffering. And even for providers too, because they're burnt out, they're overworked, they're overextended. They know they can't take as good care of their patients as they wanted to if they weren't so busy. It really is a way to help alleviate the suffering of so many people.
It really is. Shifting just a little bit to the mental health, I think it's so good for mental health visits to be conducted in this way. I speak with a therapist every week. I take my mental health very very seriously. I've met with her for years. Of course, the pandemic hit. She's local, but we were forced to do the Zoom, and we both have liked it so much better. I feel like it helped with my treatment because I was a lot more relaxed and open sitting in my kitchen having the conversation with her as opposed to driving to the office, sitting in the waiting room, maybe getting a little bit nervous. And yeah, she's never gone back to the in person. It's all virtual for her now.
I love it. And it shows us, it gives us the opportunity to challenge the way we've always done things. We've always done therapy in person, but do we need to? Is there something therapeutic about getting in your car and driving across town and calling off work and waiting in a waiting room and then driving back across town? And, you're losing probably double the amount of time in your day. We don't. And the funny thing about it is there's this perception that people have had, which I think is going away, that you can't form as good of a relationship like this than you can being in person. But so many people, patients and providers alike, have said exactly what you said, which is, I actually feel better. I feel more secure, more comfortable. And I feel, because I'm going to tell you a secret, it's not where you're physically located that gives you a relationship. It's the dynamic between the people that gives you a relationship. And if you feel most comfortable to open up and be willing to participate in that relationship, doctor patient, therapist patient, physical therapist patient, whoever it is, if you are more open to the relationship and technology enables you to do that, then you have a better relationship than you would if you were physically sitting across from them going, okay, let me tell you about all my mental health struggles. you know
And there's that. I was thinking about this too as you were speaking. There's kind of that space between you. I mean, it's the same with a regular doctor's visit. You get up on the table and the crunchy, you're trying not to crunch the paper.
I can hear it.
You're half dressed or you're in a gown, and there's this formality, I think, that can prevent that intimacy.
Yes, it can. It really can. And you can save that for, I mean, there's a time and place for crunchy paper and lack of intimacy, but it's not everywhere. It's not everywhere at all. And I love that you mentioned, mental health, because one of the earlier roles that I had, I worked for Brightside, which is one of my favorite totally virtual telemedicine platforms, which has been around for probably, I would bet you it's been around for a decade now. And I did mental health medication management. I'm not a therapist, but you can't have those types of patients without at least getting to know them and knowing what's going on in their life. And I can't do the therapy, but I can listen. And those were some of the most meaningful patient visits I ever had, because they might be in the middle of Oklahoma and they would say the nearest therapist was 4 hours away. And if it wasn't for virtual, they would have nothing. They would have
Wow.
nothing, no care at all, because they weren't going to drive 4 hours one way to see a therapist. And there was nothing in their town. Nothing.
Wow. See, think of the lives too just saved. Like if someone suffers from severe depression and they can't get any kind of care. I'm just thinking of that right now. Middle of Oklahoma, things are 4 hours away. That could be
Missouri was
life-saving.
like that too. Missouri, Arkansas, some of the states in the middle of the country, they're just so big and they're so vast, and the cities are spread out. There's a lot of farmland. There is not a high concentration of therapists or specialists. They have nothing. And the argument that some people would say is, well, why don't you just go in and be seen in person? There is nothing. How are they going to do that?
Oh, I get it because we have a lot of rural area, a lot of poverty in the state too, where people are just kind of just out in the middle of nowhere. So, you've got your hub of people in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and then Las Cruces and a couple of other smaller cities or towns. But in between a lot of those areas is just miles and miles of rural.
Yeah. And they deserve care. This is what I tell people. They deserve care just as much as the people in New York City and Los Angeles and Miami and Dallas. And it's so interesting because it's the states, pull out my little soapbox here. It's the states that have so much rural space and people who are not getting care. Those tend to be the ones that have stricter laws. Isn't that
You're
crazy?
right.
And I don't
You're right.
understand. That's part of kind of what we were talking about in Mississippi last week, which nothing but love for the Mississippi Board of Medicine. They listened and they heard what we had to say about virtual care, and they had compassion and openness and willing to listen and learn and grow. And I promise this, when my project that I talked about is ready, Mississippi will be the first one to receive it because they were willing to have open hearts to what we were saying there. But some of these more rural, kind of more poverty ridden places have been the hardest to get telemedicine into because the people that make the rules, they just don't understand, and they love their people and they're trying to take good care of them, but they need to be educated as to how and why this is so good for their people. And it sounds like New Mexico is pretty good. They've been pretty progressive, but prior to the pandemic, they were one of those states that their laws were just not, they didn't enable us to be able to deliver the most care to the most people in the most technologically progressive way.
Oh, I could see that for sure, having lived here well, since 1990. And a lot of it is just like this. We've always done it this way, kind of a fear of change, that changing of the guard. They don't want to mix things up. They don't want to introduce anything new. I know my nurse practitioner has struggled with getting things across state lines that would be good for treatment for people, such as some of the peptides.
Mhm.
She's had quite a battle with that.
Oh, that's very difficult, especially functional medicine. If you want to talk about integrative health, yes, peptides, even hormone balancing and
Mhm.
lab testing. I mean, there is just so much state by state variation. And again, you can get in trouble so easily. And we have a long way to go. But I tell you what, Carol, I feel so encouraged. I feel so encouraged because if we get the right person with the right heart and the right voice saying the right things to the right people who can make those rules, we can and we will change. And it's coming. I know it is.
It's so exciting. I'm excited listening to you talk about it. I'm going to be following following you in the journey of this because
Thank
it
you.
does. A change starts right here with us individually. It doesn't start at the top. I say this so frequently. It comes from the bottom up and not the top down.
It has to. And it's not that the top doesn't want to change, right? But it's that, and I feel this as a CEO, right? I'm looking at the whole thing. I'm looking at the whole, we can use a military term, right? Field grade officers, they see the whole field. Strategic level officers, they see the whole war. And it's hard to know what those lower level problems are. They're looking at everything. And somebody from the bottom has to be able to be willing to share what the problems are because the people in charge, they want to make rules that are good on our behalf. They want to give us the change that we need. But if we don't take the time to tell them, they'll never know.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, I like that you talked about how they really do want the change, but that's hard when you're at the top and you're doing all of the things. You're already spread thin, and it's really
Became
even hard
possible.
to know. Yeah, it's very difficult. I agree.
Became
Now,
possible.
I want to switch gears a bit because I'm really curious about the Ukraine. When I was reading your bio and how you brought telemedicine to a war-torn country, what was that like?
It was not easy, and I certainly did not do it alone. Let me start with that because I had many partners. So, like VC, for example, which is a telehealth company, we had people on our team who were directly liaisoning with the government there. We had phone call or Skype calls, Zoom calls with people who were in the Ministry of Health over there, and it was hard because the last thing you ever want to do is to come in and say, here, apply my first world problems to your war. And so it was a bit of an uphill battle. But at the end of the day, everyone wanted the same thing, which is to care for people. So we partnered with a very high powered digital health platform, VC, and we got some liaisons on the ground who helped us. And I was able to see patients. I saw the very first patient myself who which required me to find an ophthalmologist. But the nice thing is that in the US, everyone was willing to volunteer. Doctors were flooding my inbox saying, I work in radiology. How can I help? I work in oncology. How can I help? And it wasn't as hard as you would think because we already had the technology that we could share through QR codes and links, and they have smartphones and they had computers. The technology was there. So it was just a matter of sharing the technology, getting permission from the Ministry of Health, which was easy to get once we had the conversation, and then finding specialists all across the world who are willing to do that. And then it was just a matter of accessing the patients. I would consider it a successful project.
That is so beautiful that you're able to reach out to this country in their time of need and that
Mhm.
we can help in that way. And this is another pro with telemedicine is not just nationally, but internationally.
Absolutely. I would love to see, and this is a loftier goal, but who says our goals have to be small? I would love to be able to see some sort of international telemedicine network. People travel, people go all over the world. And the standard of care definitely changes from one country to another. Yes, it does. But why can't we create an international standard of care for things that can be handled through telemedicine? I think that we could be more unifying in our efforts, but we have a long way to go before we can get there.
That's a big endeavor, I know, but
That's
you
it.
can
That's like
see
the
the
30-year plan. The people who come after me can do with that one, probably.
so you are helping other doctors to do what you've done. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Every day.
So you're helping them with the startup, how to implement telemedicine. What does that look like when you are working with doctors, working with a practice on getting this going?
Well, it all depends on what that doctor is and what they want to do. Nurse practitioner, PA, doctor, functional medicine, whatever, any sort of clinician. Because I tell them that there is no one size fits all. I can give you 100 different solutions for the same endeavor, but I want it to be based off of what you want to do. So yesterday I was talking to a doctor who is a surgeon and wants to start a telemedicine company. And we were having a discussion of, well, you have to decide. Do you want to be the CEO or do you want to be the head doctor? Because you can't be both. The laws don't let you be both. So you can either be the CEO of your company or you can be the practicing physician. What do you want? What do you want? What's the best for you? And so I challenge them to discover what the best future for them looks like. And then we work backwards from there and say, does that mean you start a company? Does that mean you start doing um, does that mean you start doing virtual care for your patients? Does that mean you quit your day job and just freelance for telemedicine companies because you want to retire, but not all the way? Do you want to be an advocate? Do you want to, there's just a million. Do you want to be an advisor? Do you want to be an investor? I mean, there's so much. Do you want to be a mentor? And every clinician that I have ever talked to, they're all thinking about doing something different. I don't remember the last time I talked to one clinician who said, I love everything about my job and I want to do this all day, every day for the rest of my career. And I will be so happy and not burned out and never daydream of doing anything else.
Just
None of
doesn't
them say
happen.
that. None of them say that. Medicine is an industry where everyone is really hurting, and they want some pressure relief. And so that's what it looks like. To answer your question, it looks like whatever they need it to look like, and I really help them to find their best version of their career.
Because they're really not taught in medical school how to do a business. The business aspect is, I'm assuming, is missing.
100% missing. You
So
get
then they
no education.
probably wind up in a position where, they're seeing patient after patient, back to that burnout, which isn't that they don't want to see the patients, but I can relate to it, having been a personal trainer for years, and you just see person after person after person. There is a point that you can't do it anymore. You're just burned out. But I'm sure that they haven't considered alternatives to that.
Or they just don't. I think there's two things. Face my camera a little bit. I think there's two things. One is it's fear. It's fear. Because starting your own business, no matter what industry you're in, is very scary to do that, right? Branching out is terrifying. But then the second, I think, is and you lose your safety net, you lose your comfort zone, you lose your income, you don't trust yourself, you don't know a lot about it. And then the second thing is just they just have no idea what to do. That's why a lot of doctors like myself go back and get an MBA, because we don't get taught, we get an ethics class in medical school, and that's as close as you get to business. So I went back and got a whole nother graduate degree in business just so that I could speak the same basic language as people who do business, because business is a language, medicine is a language. They don't even speak the same basic terms. So there's a lot in the way, but once we can empower them not to be so scared and just do it, they never regret it, I don't think.
Very, very well said. Very well put. I agree with you 100%. And I think there's many fields like this where people just learn the job that they're going to do, but they don't learn the business aspect of it, which would be so valuable going forward. Now, for young, and most of my listeners are female, so I'm going to zero in on the women here. For young women, like my daughter, Francesca, who's applying to PA school, do you have advice? And I know that's a very
Wow.
broad statement, but what advice would you give a young woman embarking on her medical career?
Well, I know your secret. I know your secret, young woman embarking on your career, and your secret is that you want to change the world. I know that you do. I hear this all the time from the 18 to 24-year-old women, medical students or college students. This generation has a burning desire to change the world. I know they do. I hear it every single time. And my advice to you is this: whatever industry you work in, whether it's healthcare or something else, learn learn your job first. Get the best education you can. Learn as much about everything as you possibly can. Absorb it all and keep it here. And then learn how to do your job better than anybody else around you. Because the biggest tool that you have to be able to change the world and to be innovative and to be an entrepreneur, the biggest tool that you have is actually knowledge. You have to know your industry inside and out. You have to know your profession inside and out. Go invite yourself to meetings. Like if you want to go and be an entrepreneur or a business person, invite yourself into business meetings. Like people might think you're weird, but also they'll think it's pretty cool that the PA wants to sit in on, some sort of a strategic business meeting. Learn as much as you can. Offer to shadow people, offer to show up and do things and attend things and educate yourself on every facet of whatever your industry is. Because the knowledge, the more you know, the more you start to see about where the change can be and where the opportunities are and where the problems are and where the need is. Because if you can find where the need is, then you'll find where the change needs to be. But it starts with getting that incredible education, learning as much as you can, perfecting your craft. Because I was a great doctor before I was an innovator and an entrepreneur, right? I learned how to be an incredible physician first, even though I don't practice as much medicine anymore. I did for a long time, but I had to do that in order to get to the point where I could change the world. So be patient, you'll get there. And I'm excited to see what this generation of women produces, because you all are going to blaze the trail for my children, who my girls are 9 and 7, and they're going to follow right behind you, ready to start flipping tables and making even more change in the world.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I love that. And finding, which you said something about finding the need. I thought that that was just perfect. Finding the need.
Because that's where the change needs to be. People are suffering. People are suffering. And they might not look like it outwardly, but if you hear about what they complain about, if you hear about what they're struggling with and they don't like, and that's why you need to be in the system for a while first, because where you suffer, where you struggle, where you hurt, where your need is, that's where the change needs to be.
Yes, so good. So good. Thank you, Dr. Purdy. I want to be respectful of your time. And
Of
as
course.
we wrap up, how can listeners connect with you?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I love getting the opportunity to speak, and I hope that my words have touched the hearts of people who are listening today. I love to connect with everyone. You can find me on Instagram at America's Favorite Doctor. Um, I will say that DMs, I answer them pretty quickly, but I may send you like an email address or a phone number or something, because I don't keep up with them as well as I would love to. I also have a website. It's www.drlaurapurdy.com. And I have a LinkedIn. I'm there too. You can find me all over the internet. I love to connect to people. Just send me a message. Follow me on Instagram. I mean, I do an IG live every Wednesday with a different guest, and we talk about different topics, and it's really exciting, and people enjoy listening. I have everyone from like business owners to influencers, anybody, actors, actresses, musicians, anybody can come and talk to me about whatever they want. So it's a lot of fun. But that's where you can find me, and I hope to be able to speak with you again soon. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in.
Oh, this has been wonderful, Dr. Purdy. I appreciate the work that you are doing for really everyone right now with getting telemedicine and the care that people need all over the world, all over the country, and then just being a mentor to these young women, because that's really what it's about. We have to pass that torch and kind of pave the way for those coming up. So I appreciate your work. I appreciate you being on here. I know you're very busy, and I'm definitely going to be following you on Instagram because the lives sound amazing. And I'll make sure that all that is in the show notes.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to our listeners, we wish you every blessing. Bye bye.
Bye.